The stock market may be headed for a correction in 2022. Let's talk about it. Hello everybody, Joe Werber coming at you. And while 2021 is going to go in the record books as one of the greatest years we've seen in the stock market, with the S&P 500 up over 20%, the NASDAQ up close to 30%, and the Dow close to almost an 18% return year to date, how does 2022 look? Well, unfortunately, it's a big question. We are not certain what is going to happen next year. While the economy is recovering, we are seeing some serious issues in our supply chains, which is causing some serious inflation concerns, and this could affect what is going to happen in the stock market next year. So let's dive in a little bit deeper. There are two different sides to inflation. You have demand side inflation and supply side inflation. And right now what we're experiencing with the CPI, which as you can see, is not high across the board. Certain areas are experiencing much higher inflation. Other areas are experiencing lower inflation. We can see that gas and transportation industry is up close to 20% inflation-wise, while rent and Medicare are down below 3%. So is it going to stay like this? I don't believe so. I think the next 6 to 12 months could be pretty bad for inflation. First off, let's talk about car manufacturers. Right now, we're seeing a lot of car manufacturers cut back or eliminate their 2022 models. Number one, due to microchip shortage. We talked about this in a previous video. Microchip manufacturers aren't willing to go through the retooling process. Seems to be a game of chicken. Who's going to blink first? Will it be the car manufacturers or the microchip makers? I think it'll have to be the manufacturers. And it looks like they're doing that by cutting back on their actual new cars being produced in 2022. Mercedes is actually shutting down production in their factories in Germany, and it looks like they've canceled all 2022 cars that have V8s except for the S-Class. On top of microchip shortages, we're seeing a very large increase in steel costs. Steel is typically around $400 per ton, and we're looking at prices next year could be exceeding $600 per ton, or a 50% increase. This is going to, of course, impact auto manufacturers' ability to sell cars at certain levels. So while we haven't seen prices skyrocket across the board, a lot of the companies are actually taking the hit themselves, but eventually they will have to start raising prices on most goods and services, and 2022 could be the year where the public starts to have to bear the brunt of this high increase in cost of goods. On top of everything else we've talked about, food prices are actually soaring across the world. We're seeing 30% increases in some places. And fortunately for us in America, we have not seen that increase because, as I mentioned before, a lot of these companies are just taking those extra costs in. However, starting in 2022, we are going to see some significant increases in our food. A lot of this has to do with, number one, fertilizer prices are going up, and fertilizer is a difficult commodity to get right now. And if you don't have fertilizer, you don't have food. So we're seeing some crop shortages. And number two, growing seasons take a while to catch up. So during the pandemic, people cut back. Now they're trying to bring those foods to market. You just can't create food overnight. It has to grow. So we are seeing some massive problems in food, and we could see in this country, like we've seen in the rest of the world, maybe up to 30% food increases in 2022. And that is going to hit the average American right in their pocket, because we've seen savings rates decline. We've seen people begin to spend the money they've saved. And now next year, we could see food prices skyrocket, and that could hurt a lot of Americans. And that too could send the stock market into a downwards. But we're also seeing a delivery problem. California's ports are overwhelmed with shipping containers. Did you know that 40% of all goods that are produced overseas come through California ports, and those ports are overwhelmed? We saw a lot of these shipping companies last year divert their containers to other parts of the world because people were buying less during the pandemic. Now those containers are stuck in other places. We don't have those containers, or the ships that actually made it through and arrived at the ports in California have come to a bottleneck. They can't unload the containers quickly enough. They can't deliver the containers quickly enough. Take truck drivers, for instance. I know they're getting a bad rap, but realize that a truck driver is paid per load. Whether they can deliver that load in a week or if it takes them a week and a half to deliver that load, they get paid the exact same fee. So if they're stuck at a port for 18, 24, or 36 hours waiting to be loaded, they're losing money. So we're seeing a lot of truck drivers just saying, I'm not going to bother picking up in California because it's going to cost me too much in wait time. But in October, The federal government pushed for California to make changes, and changes they made. We've seen they've increased their stacking size from 2 containers to 4 containers. They're actually looking to purchase more land to be able to offload more containers. We're seeing cheap money being thrown at them to improve their port size. So this is going to take some time, but the positive coming out of this 6 months to 12 months from now is we will have a much more efficient port system in California, which means once we get through this hump, the cost of goods should fall back to pre-pandemic levels. I do not believe these high costs are going to last. So what does all of this mean for the stock market in 2022? Well, it's a mixed bag. We're seeing Morgan Stanley predict that the S&P 500 will fall to 4,100 or a loss of about 6 to 7% next year. On the other side, Goldman Sachs is predicting a gain of around 8%, and they're looking to see the S&P 500 finish at the end of 2022 around 5,100. Who's to say for certain? But what I do know, a lot of companies are pulling back on their predictions for profit next year. And that has to do with the simple fact that they don't have enough goods to offer. Mercedes doesn't have cars to sell. The grocery stores don't have enough food to sell. It's not like it was during the pandemic, and don't expect the shelves to be empty, but we are going to see across the board lower profits in 2022 simply because of the supply issues. Does that mean that when the markets actually see these lower profits coming through, that it's going to overreact and we're going to see some crashing in 2022? Or does the market know that this is going to happen and has already priced it in? I'm of the belief that we're not going to see 20% corrections next year. Now, one of my favorite quotes is by a brilliant man by the name of Yogi Berra, who said, "I hate to make predictions, especially about the future, but I truly feel like we could see the market still grow next year. I just don't believe it's going to be like we saw in 2020 or 2021, but I still feel good about the future of this economy." I believe if we can get more microchips made, we can get steel out there, we can get the California ports fixed, next year could be a great year. Again, just not as good as we've seen in the past. However, that's why you need to check back every week as I put out more and more videos and explain to you exactly what's going on behind the scenes so you can make informed decisions on your own. If you like videos like this, make sure you subscribe, comment down below because I read everybody's comments. I appreciate the positive, the negative. Let me know what you'd like to see in future videos, and I'll see you all next week.